presentation. I thought it would be really, really interesting because they have a twofold on that. One is for care of an animal, and the other one is to track uh, those who are missing. Um, See, I haven't heard anything back from them, but hopefully they'll be today. Madeline, did you know if they confirm they're going to be here? Bernadine
Um,
and
I did
Andrea?
not, I did
Okay.
not get any confirmation. I did send
Okay.
them the invite, so they
Yeah.
have it.
Yeah. Well, uh, I've also written them, so I don't know. Then we'll get down to the updates. I know a few of you attended the NIEA, and I just wanted to know some of your experiences on that. I've had, there was three workshops that I went to. Really, really, it was, it was very, for me, it was really, really informative. And one person that presented was Al Groves. I attended one of his sessions, and it was really interesting. Um, then we have the Urban Indian Center and the Indian Training Center with updates if they're available, and we'll adjourn. Just to be aware, for next month, our meeting is going to be on a Wednesday instead of a Friday. Again, that's the scheduling conflict. So if you could remark your calendar for Wednesday, November 12th, next month, and we'll go from there. So that's the agenda for today. And, I'll go through uh, this process again, especially to remind that November 12th of next month, we'll have our Title VI meeting. So without further explaining anything else, I ask Soraya to give us a cultural reverence. So I'll just give the time to her, and she can go from there. Go ahead, Soraya.
Sounds good. Thanks, Dr. Foster. I know I usually talk about my Taos dwellings, the Taos Pueblo. Wanted to do something a little bit different today. I know a lot of us, there's only a few of us fighting the fight in our districts, and we try to do the best we can. Um, so I just wanted to share one of our fights. We've been trying to change the fourth grade program in our district, at least the part with the native part that has that old song that nobody likes. I'm sure you guys all know that one. And amongst other things that we're trying to change. But I wanted to share something that our our fine arts department worked with Brenda Bale from the BYU Native Education Curriculum. What is it called? Whatever they're doing there at the BYU with the Native initiatives. Um, anyway, our fine arts department kind of spearheaded it and um, took it to our some of our elementaries, and we're trying to put that as our ongoing fourth grade program as part of it. So I wanted to share with you the excerpt of how it worked. This was the first school that we went to last year, and I wanted to show you what we included for our native part. And we still could include a lot more, but I thought this was better than what we had. So I will play it for you guys. Can you see it?
Yes.
Long before settlers, the native tribes were here and are still here today. We are here on the
And you can't hear the kids
ancestral
very well, but they're
land of
talking
your
about
ancestors
natives in
showing
general,
kinship.
the
They
tribal
are one of
nations
the
of
eight
Utah.
federally recognized sovereign nations within Utah. Each tribal nation has their own song, standards, and way of living.
The Shoshone people have a song that represents their love for the mountains. When asked about this, the tribal people shared this.
Our mountain, Damandoy, has been here through ages of time. The clouds come to Damandoy with water. They are high rolling and yet stay at the top of our mountain, rich with the promise of water. Damandoy is winters. Spring after spring, the snow has melted from our mountain and run down to the valleys, swelling the rivers, making homes for fish and wildlife. Dom and Dora is home for us too. Home is where we are taught our good work. That we are the people. Home is where we are taught what is important. We honor our mothers and our fathers, our grandmothers and our grandfathers. They loved their mountains and valleys and cared for them. In turn, their mountain gave them food, shelter, and beauty. They knew that it was good to share their land with the animals, plants, and even other people. Damen means to share. Dom and Doya are nothing. Listen as Helen Timbindu, a tribal elder in the northwestern band of the Shoshone Nation, sings a song about the mountains. This song was passed down from our ancestors.
Dammendoya vai vagana havigin. Dammendoya vai vagana havigin. Vagana havigin. Vagana havigin. Dammendoya vai vagana havigin. Dammendoya vai vagana havigin. Vagana havigin. Vagana havigin. Na hayuana.
We have been given permission to perform this song for you as well. This song is sung without accompaniment.
Sorry, I was muted. I love that just because it was so much better having, especially because the Northwestern Band of Shoshone Nation is really close to us. It's what, half hour, 45 minutes away. And we do our tribal consultation with them. So it had more of a connection. And I see Brooklyn right there, who that's her tribe. But it, you know, it brought tears to my eyes because that was the beginning of our making a difference. I know that's, don't give up hope on your fights that you have. They're worth it, and these kids are learning a lot more about our tribes. So I just wanted to share that with you guys, and yeah, that's it.
Sarai, I just wanted to hop on because that just brought tears to my eyes because that being my grandma and that's the song that I would sing with my grandma. So I like instantly resonated with that and like how powerful that was for me just to see that was amazing. You're doing
We'll have
great.
to invite you when we do it live. But it was, then that's the thing, it was impactful for not even just or me, it was for our students and for the families because they were all right there loving
I
that
love
as well. And I love
That's
that they
amazing.
gave your grandma the opportunity to sing
Yes,
and then the kids after that.
I know. I love that. That was amazing. Thank you.
I'll send you the link.
Thank you. Yes, please do.
I will.
That was great. Hey, thank you. Thank you for your comment too, Brooklyn. So that was our cultural reverence, and I think this is a good thing in terms of setting the stage for what we have. And I noticed that Dustin's here, and I think I'll just turn the time over to him and have him do his program or do his presentation.
Thank you, Sarai. Thank you for sharing that. I'm glad they're letting you do things like that, and that you're fighting to help your students find their voice there. That's one of the hardest things I think to do for K through 12 is helping your native students find their voice and be able to articulate the things that they'd like, and 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 make, present a good argument for why it should be a certain way. I'm going to share my screen. Um, I'll see if I can do this right. I have, I have a few things that have been on my mind lately. I'm a professor at Utah Valley University, and we had yeah, it was all over the news, but we had a shooting on our campus with and of a conservative podcaster. His name was Charlie Kirk, and he was shot on UVU campus this semester, and died. And we, a lot of our students, despite whatever their political ideology is, it was a traumatic experience for them, and it was really hard for them to even come back to school. We suspended classes for a week, and and eased people back into the learning environment because we had students scared to come to school, knowing that someone there was killed for for their political points of view. And so it hit our student body really hard. And so we have a lot of programs going on since then that are offered at different times, different days, and just so that we can find as many students as possible that may need help, talking about things. And what I've come to notice is that all these talks revolve about healing, and that this healing can only come through forgiveness. And so or something that in political science we call, or at least in peace and justice studies, we call restorative justice. And so I put together some thoughts, and hopefully it helps you understand your students a little better. Hopefully it maybe gives you a way to interact with your students, and maybe even interact with others in your school when you're trying to make these changes and move forward and be productive. I don't know if anybody has ever seen or heard of this tribe in Africa. They're called the Babemba tribe, and they actually have something called a forgiveness ceremony. Um, and it's a belief called Ubuntu, which I guess is translated to "I am because we are." I am because we are, and that's a big. What that means is that I am a part of a community, and my community has strength, and I can participate or partake in that strength uh, as I work with others. And so let me go back. And and I okay. And I like the way they do this. So what happens is when their tribe, when they act irresponsibly or dangerous or cause harm to someone, they're taken to the center of their village, and they're surrounded by every community member. And for up to 2 days, people will come up to this person, this accused person, and one on one praise all the good things that they've done in their life, rather than focus on the harm that they did or they just committed or the mistake they just made. They tell this person personal stories of why they admire them, the good that they've done, and the purpose of this is it reminds people, it reminds the accused person of their inherent goodness, right? Which the tribe believes was this person was temporarily disconnected from, and because they believe that when people make mistakes, um, they do it as a cry for help, you know, rather than and they want to give that help rather than offer punishment instead. You know, this ritual aims to uplift individuals, and it reconnects them to their true nature and restoring their case of belonging with their neighbors. Um, the philosophy behind it is this interconnectedness. It emphasizes the interconnectedness of individuals, that a person's well-being is tied to, and that, well, but let me say that better. It emphasizes the interconnectedness of individuals, and that a person's well-being is tied to the well-being of the entire community, and it supports, you know, the community. Then that this ritual reflects that this Ubuntu belief that a community has a responsibility to support its members, even when they make mistakes, even when they falter. And it's kind of a shared humanity in that the focus on forgiveness and the restoration of the individual rather than shaming them or you know, emphasizing the wrong they did. It's a reminder that they're good people and that they can do good things, and when this is all done, that person is welcomed back into that community. And this can be a hard thing. I get that for a lot of people. And the reason why I came up with this presentation is that I wanted to provide the a basic premise on the importance of peace building, and that we can all learn and become better by treating native beliefs and practices as knowledge. You know, I think for a long time we've traditionally taken native beliefs or indigenous beliefs as data for maybe an anthropologist or an ethnographer, but we don't ever view what we take as knowledge. You know, our the argument I guess I'm trying to make is that there's a richness in native beliefs or indigenous beliefs that can make major contributions in the ways we approach peace building, especially. But the significant benefits come from recognizing the knowledge. You know, when we hear native stories, when we hear origin stories, when we hear coyote stories, when we hear deer lady stories or whatever, these aren't just myths to to teach us a lesson, but there's knowledge embedded within them that we need to search after. And I'm not, this ain't an original thought of mine. You know, there's a lot of people that talk about it, and I'm gonna share just a few quotes from some activists that I've read and studied throughout my years. And we're gonna look at a Cuban academic, philosopher, poet. His name was Jose Marti. We'll look at something Russell Means has said, and we'll look at Miguel Leon Portilla, who was from Mexico, and he's an anthropologist and historian there. Let's see if I can move this. Let me see. It says, what's this say? Um, you know, this is the premise I'm looking at, but we're gonna take a look at these three individuals. We're gonna again just do a really quick pass over the Great Law of Peace that we went over last month, and then I'll give you some examples of of these teachings, or and at least and restorative justice examples here in Indian country, and close off with some remarks. But this guy right here, his name is Jose Marti. I had never heard of Jose Marti until I lived in Miami for 2 years, And, out here in the West, we have, Cesar Chavez or MLK roads and streets all over Florida and South Florida. The streets and parks are named after this guy, Jose Marti. And he was an academic, absolutely, but he was also somebody that stressed freedom and liberty and peace. And he said something. There's a little excerpt of what he said, but I'm going to read to you the entire his statement. He said, "To know is to solve. To know the country and govern it in accordance with the knowledge is the only way of freeing it from tyranny." He says, "The European university must yield to the American university. The history of America from the Incas to the present must be taught in its smallest detail, even if the Greek acrons go untaught. Our own Greece is preferable to the Greece that is not ours. We need it more. Statesmen who arise from the nation must replace statesmen who are alien to it. Let the world be grafted onto our republics, but we must be the trunk. And let the vanquished pedant hold his tongue, for there is no patria in which a man can take greater pride than in our long suffering American republics." What he was saying here is when the Americas were being colonized and settled by European nations, Spain, France, England, is that we've adopted European ways of thought into this land. And so what he's saying is if you really want to understand and do well and grow in the Americas, you need to understand the people that have lived here. You need to understand the teachings of the people that were here prior to you coming. And that's what he means that, it's time for the European university to yield to the American university. What he's saying is those 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 European Western ways of thought and thinking and lessons, they need to take a back seat to those same teachings that are found here by the people that were here before. We can't just dismiss their stuff as cool cultural things we get to watch every once in a while, but we actually have to find the teachings and the wisdom and the knowledge that's associated with it. Russell Means, this is how he says it. He says it takes a strong effort on the part of each American Indian not to become Europeanized. The strength for this effort can only come from the traditional ways, the traditional values that our elders retain. It must come from the hoop, the four directions, the relations. It cannot come from the pages of a book or 1,000 books. No European can ever teach a Lakota to be Lakota, a Hopi to be Hopi. A master's degree in Indian studies or in education or in anything else cannot make a person into a human being or provide knowledge into the traditional ways. It can only make you into a mental European, an outsider. And that is what he was. So that's the same thing. And if we're looking to teach Native kids, we should have Native teachers that are available to share those teachings. You know, and there's some things that schools can't teach, and there's some things that schools have to avoid. But we need to find these leaders and knowledge keepers within our communities and find ways to hook our kids up with them, right? it's it needs to come, that learning needs to come from these indigenous teachers that have been here. This is Miguel Leon Portilla. He himself was a Mexican anthropologist and historian, and he specialized in Aztec cultures and their teachings. And the natives in northern Mexico are called Nahuatl, and he studied their philosophies on things. And this is what he said. He says and he talks about peacemakers. He goes, the peacemaker makes wise the countenance of others. He contributes to their assuming a face. He leads them to develop it. Before their faces, he places a mirror. Prudent and wise, he makes them. He causes a face to appear on them. Thanks to him, people humanize their will. He ends this and says, and receive a strict education. So when he talks about finding peace and learning things, you have to really understand a culture, you should understand their peacemakers and how they make communities better things. I've shared this with you, and I'm not going to go too far deep into it, but I will say that this, in recognizing the Iroquois Confederacy, for their contributions to the development of the United States Constitution and our way of governance. We've talked about that last month, but also, I think it's good to understand that, their way of peace meant a lot of talking. Okay. They had to talk things out and talk a lot. And for, as a little kid growing up on the Navajo res, I can't tell you how burned out I was listening to people talk. um, Everywhere my parents took me, somebody was talking for a long time. And it was hard for me, but as I got older, I realized how important those talks were. And I realized how much I missed out on because when they spoke for a long time, I didn't listen. I would just tune everybody out and, play with the GI Joe or something. And it was hard for me to stay focused and to do those things. Um, you know, when what they say when they it says it shall be the duty of all chiefs of the League of Five Nations from time to time, as occasion demands, to act as teachers and spiritual guides for their people and remind them of their Creator's will and words. Right. So when I read that, I thought about all the things that we can read and learn about our leaders and chiefs and the things that they've said. And it's good to be reminded of those things all the time, and under that great law of peace, it says when your leaders come down, when your true leaders come down and talk to you, they'll say, listen, that peace may continue unto future days. Always listen to the words of the great Creator, for he has spoken. United people, let no evil find lodging in your minds. For the great Creator has spoken, and the cause of peace shall not become old. The cause of peace shall not die if you remember the great Creator. Right? No chief shall ask a question of the body of chiefs of the league when they are discussing a case, question, or proposition. It says he may only deliberate in a low tone with the separate body of which he is a member. And so when I read that and looked at it, it talks about not just the duties of a leader to not just govern but to teach and to lead and to actually lead, but the way he should do it too, or the way she should do it. Right? It says that he may do it in a low tone. Right? He's not there to challenge people and to make things hard. He's there to bring light and understanding to things. And so I thought that was pretty awesome with the way they shared that. Uh, I shared this last time about how the native people in the Northeast, that how they saw their leaders and how they saw them as teachers and leaders as long as they were doing it correctly. Right. And this quote shows this is a visiting Englishman, and how he looked at the tribal governments and saw that the leadership was working at the will of the people. And when that leader stopped working for the will of the people, that leader was removed. And that was something that wasn't very common in European laws and government practice, at least not without bloodshed. There was no peaceful way of changing out leaders, where in the Americas, the change out of leadership was pretty common. People got old, people lost focus, people stopped doing their job, and we had to keep our leadership fresh, with people that wanted to do right. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of the Northern Cheyenne Council of 44. The Cheyenne social structure is built around this. It's a chief society of the Northern Cheyenne, and it has a lot of origin stories. Navit Spotted Elk, who's a current member of the Chief Society, states that a holy man named Sweet Medicine received the government structure and the sacred arrows directly from the holy people. Others say that the origin of the Chief Society came from Cheyenne children who found themselves deserted from their people, and the animals were feeling sorry for them. And so they had pity on them and they took care of them and taught them the importance of proper governance. But regardless of the origin of this chief society, it's an unmatched traditional government of the Plains tribes. It's a representation of the 44 consisted of 4 chiefs from each of the 10 bands of the Cheyenne. And the other 4 chiefs were representatives from different tribes, some of which became Cheyenne in time. But most notably, there was usually a Dakota representative as a rule, just to guarantee some formal government to government recognition of the Cheyenne Sioux Alliance by providing a voice to a non Cheyenne. And each chief serves for a period of 10 years. And then, when their 10 years is up, each chief chooses his own successor. This chief council separates peaceful civil authority from military power. Once a chief is called to the chief council, his role in any military society is no longer active. The inactive status serves to prevent any conflicts of interest that might arise with the chief fulfilling his foremost duty of peace. Right? The emphasis is on peace, not on war. And with this peaceful outlook, the chief society establishes the political direction for the tribe. Chiefs also fulfill their roles to individuals needing help by providing encouragement through guidance and counseling. Today, the Cheyenne maintain their Council of 44. Through the years, the presence of agency officials supplanted Cheyenne self-government by substituting their traditional governance and management of public affairs. Today, the Council of 44, or traditional government, it takes a larger role in ceremonial purposes. But, and again, a large council whose emphasis is peace and getting along just among the bands of the Cheyenne and also the inclusion of tribes that they were in alliance with. I've shared this story with you before. This is the court case called Ex parte Crow Dog, and what happens here is they're in the Plains society. The older people had a lot of weight to their words, and after the Civil War, um, the 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 cavalry had a hard time enforcing law in Indian country, and they had this idea that they would deputize a lot of the younger native men to become Indian police. And this created some conflict among the people up there because you're putting younger people in a position to tell older people what to do. And this really upsets the dynamic of their leadership and their community structure. But anyway, we had these 2 people. On the left, we have Crow Dog, and on the right, we have Spotted Tail. Spotted Tail ends up becoming an Indian policeman. Um, anyway, these 2 didn't get along, and they got into it, and Crow Dog ends up killing Spotted Tail. Uh, he, and this happened in 1881. The murder took place in Indian country, and the perpetrator was Indian, the victim was Indian, so we had Indian on Indian crime in Indian country. And so the local Indian agent officials, they just sent it to the tribe to handle. They sent it to the tribal council, and the tribal council, they had a meeting on it, and they had to remind Crow Dog what happened. You just didn't kill a man, a police officer. You killed a husband. You killed somebody's uncle. You killed a father. You killed an important member, a warrior for this tribe, and and you caused not harm not just to his family but to the tribe and the community in general. And so all the families involved and the tribal council involved, they agreed that Crow Dog should pay Spotted Tail's family about $600, 8 horses, and 1 blanket. Uh, the Indian agent, well, his wife really wasn't satisfied with that resolution, and so she wasn't very happy about the idea of her husband's killer having to, do this. That there's writings that say Crow Dog would have to take care of that family now, provide wood, provide food, do those things that her husband would have done had if he was still alive. And so, there was that family was being taken care of. But this Indian agent, they thought something more should happen. But the tribe was like, we don't want to kill him, and we don't want to hang him or shoot him or whatever, because that would mean we have two families without a provider. And so this is a way of keeping their community strong. But the Indian agent wasn't satisfied with that resolution, and that was agreed upon. And he took Crow Dog to the District Court of South Dakota Territory, and they found him guilty and sentenced him to hang. And Crow Dog appealed to the Supreme Court on a writ of habeas corpus, and a decision was handed down affirming that the traditional law that was given was the appropriate resolution. Okay. Now, how the Supreme Court, the reason why I share this is not just is it a good example of restorative justice, right? It's not a punishing justice, but also we have to look at how tribes are being seen, and sometimes this can get carried over even today into today's lens of non-Indians that look at things. The when the Supreme Court says that Crow Dog his case was handled correctly by his traditional tribal council. This is how they say it. Listen to the language that they use. He says, "It is a case where inference only is sought to be extended over aliens and strangers, over members of a community separated by race, by tradition, by the instincts of a free, though savage life." Right? They can't get away from that. They still have to call the lifestyle of these people savage, right? It says, "From the authority and power which seeks to impose upon the restraints of an external and unknown code, and to subject them to the responsibilities of civil conduct, according to the rules and penalties of which they could have no previous warning, which judges them by a standard made by others and not for them, which takes no account of the conditions which should accept them from its exactions, and makes no allowance for their inability to understand," right? Their savage life, their inability to understand American life. "It tries them not by their peers, nor by their customs of their people, nor by their law of their land, but by superiors of a different race," right? We're superior to them, and we're trying to invoke a more superior law onto them. It's continually looking down upon these people. It continues, "According to the law of social state of which they have imperfect conception, and which is opposed to the traditions of their history, to the habits of their lives, to the strongest prejudices of their savage nature, one which measures the red man's revenge by the maxims of the white man's morality." Uh, he could have just said, what, the Dakota and Lakota people, we're different. We have different views of justice, and we have different views of community and restitution. And instead, they write it in a way that says, Indians don't know better. Indians can't um, can't can't follow higher laws and better laws. I teach federal Indian law, and even my non-students in my classes have a hard time grasping that justice was received through the application of traditional Sioux law. How would this work out today? Well, I did some computations, and Crow Dog was ordered paid $600 in the 1880s. That's close to $15,000 today. 8 horses, decent horses are about $1,000 a piece. And the blanket. Why was he providing blankets? Well, blankets are used in Native cultures as an acknowledgement of friendship and gratitude, respect. And so if you see someone wearing a blanket or has a blanket given to them at one of our gatherings, it lets people know that that person has people that care for them, that honor them, and that love them. you know. Um, and I asked my what do you think? Is this the best way to handle this case? And they're all of them say, well, no, he should have been hung, or he should have gone to court, and he should have, he should have been banned. But you know, when you look back at the reasoning of why the tribe ruled the way they did and administered the justice they did, it wasn't just for the victim, and it wasn't just about the perpetrator. It was about the tribe as a whole, and looking at things as a whole. Before I go there, I bring up a book called Water Lily a lot, and I bring up a part where we have two men have a disagreement, and one man kills the other. And this story takes place in like in a traditional 1800s Dakota village. And pretty soon, when one guy kills the other guy, the other guy's family seeks revenge by killing that person back and forth. And these people were just killing each other back and forth. And um, this this victim's family, the latest victim's family, they were figuring out ways to avenge the death of their family member. And they eventually, this elder of the family acknowledges them and says, you have a right to go after somebody and get revenge and avenge someone who's been killed, but I don't know if that's the best way to do it, right? There's another way to handle these things. And what it says is that he invited all the men to go home and pick up their most prized possession. It could be a horse, a tool, a weapon, blanket, or animal hide. And when they returned, they followed that old man to the latest murderer's home. And that man didn't run because he didn't run. He didn't want to die, but he didn't want to be looked at as a coward either. So he stood there, he remained there. And he was going to fight those that came to his home. But when they didn't fight, it surprised him. Instead, that old man brought his pipe, and they all smoked together. After the old man pointed to all these possessions that were brought, and he told the murderer, all these things were his. These are his possessions now. And he would no longer be considered a murderer from this family. Instead, he would become part of that family. He says, with this stuff, you've become part of our family. You become that grandson that was killed. You become that nephew that was killed. You become that son that was killed. You become that brother that was killed. Because this killing has to stop. And so we're going to make you a relative. We're making you part of our family. And that they said that that murderer was so in shock and overwhelmed that he started crying. He didn't know what to do. And but that story in Water Lily, what it does is it emphasizes the Dakota belief that the most important thing anyone can be is a good relative. They say mitakuye oyasin, we're all related, right? Because if we recognize that we're all related, though some of us, we have to be reminded sometimes, we end up treating each other a lot better. And I'm going to share a couple things from this. Navajo Nation has a program called peacemaking. And for the Navajo people, they carry this concept of the Navajo principle of is important to understand Navajo due process. Um, it's relationships, but it's holistic relationships. It's reciprocal relationships. It's not only our relationships to other people, but to everything in this world and everything that we see. And if we see that we're related, all of us, and all with all these things, it promotes respect, it promotes solidarity, compassion, cooperation, and it helps people live in balance. Okay. Something that the Navajo Nation calls hajo. It says, although the Navajo Nation has a judicial system modeled after the Western adversarial justice system, the Navajo people also have an alternative dispute resolution system called peacemaking. And for the most part, peacemaking invokes Navajo common law, which is a little different than Navajo statutory law, which resembles Western laws. Navajo common law considers due process in light and of the customs and traditions of the Navajo people. Navajo common law comes directly, for Navajo people, comes directly from the holy people. So in 1982, the Navajo Peacemaker Court was created by Navajo judges. The judges wanted to find an alternative way that was different than Anglo-American judicial methods that had taken control of our judicial system in Navajo Nation. Something that could pull in Navajo thought processes, wisdom, methods, and customs for resolving disputes. The court that was created, it was set up to protect and support the customary practice of peacemaking, or hojoja nata, but also imposed Anglo-American court-style procedural rules on peacemaking. The judicial institutionalization of peacemaking had the inadvertent consequence of changing its fundamental nature. I'm going to share with you a couple of things that have come about because of it. Um, this, you can read about examples of how peacemaking works. There's one where this man was committing domestic violence against his wife and children, and the wife didn't want to go through criminal court for her husband. She asked that if they could do peacemaking instead. And so when they all met with the peacemaker in their community, there was no lawyers involved, and usually there's not a lot of witnesses or things. But in that case, they allowed his family to come in. They allowed her family to come in, and much like the Ubuntu practice of bringing that person to the center of the village and talking about a good person they are, rather than punishing them or shaming them, they do the same. They say, hey, you're a Navajo, you're a Navajo man, you're a husband, and these are your duties. You're a father, these are your duties. You're a man in this community, these are your duties. You're better than this, right? You're better than someone who drinks and loses control and hurts his family. And they use peacemaking as a forum to remind this man of who he is and what he could be, and why he should be that way. So that's how peacemaking works. I know I saw that this is the Navajo Nation flag in the middle, but on the right hand side you see a horned toad, which we affectionately call Che, where your grandpa, where you grow up. And they used to say that if you're lost, then if you find a horned toad, you can pick him up, hold him to your heart, and you put him down. He'll tell you which direction to go. So symbolically, if you're confused, you can seek guidance this way from older people, from your che, from your grandparents, from those older than you that can help give you direction. There's a story that goes between horned toad and lightning, and it said that before humans assumed their present form, the holy people had their own problems to address. It says, during that time, lightning and horned toad had a dispute. Horned toad was walking home on some land when suddenly lightning confronted horned toad and asserted that he, lightning, owned the land and horned toad must leave immediately. Horned toad replied, "My brother, I don't understand why you should have possession of this land, and I certainly don't lay claim to it." He continued along, and again the lightning asserted his claim, and he threw a bolt of lightning as warning. And Horned Toad said, I am very humble, and I can't hurt you as you can hurt others with your bolt of lightning. Could we just talk about this tomorrow? I'll be waiting to talk with you on top of the refuse left there by Brother Water. So Lightning agreed to it. And the following day, Horned Toad arrived wearing his armor, and Lightning announced his arrival and asserted his power again by throwing more lightning bolts at Horned Toad. Horned Toad sat atop a pile of driftwood, which was left behind after a storm. From atop that pile, he discussed the matter with Lightning. Horned Toad said, "You are very powerful. You can certainly strike me down with a bolt of lightning." "I certainly can," said Lightning. "That's not what we are here about," said Horned Toad. "We're here to discuss the land ownership issue, and we must talk." The Lightning said, "There is nothing to discuss. The land is mine." He got angry and threw some more lightning at Horned Toad. Finally, Horned Toad says, "Brother, You did not hurt me. The bolt of lightning bounced off Horntoad's armor. Brother, he said, this armor was given to me by the same source as your bolts of lightning. Why is it we are arguing over land which was also loaned to us? Right? This story takes land complaints back to the true owner, and it is a forceful traditional precedent to take the parties to common ground. It also reminds people of the importance of talking things out and the natural power and armor that comes through peaceful, consensual forms of resolving dispute. And I hope you picked that up a little bit, and sometimes if you share stories like this, people will say, well, horned toads can't talk, animals can't talk, we can't communicate together. But they're missing when they hear a story like that and they automatically dismiss it as not being possible, they miss the teaching, right? Che is your maternal grandfather. We call horned toad Che uh, because it reminds us that we can look to those older than us for help. We can look to those older than us for guidance, right? It's not just about an animal and lightning having a fight and we should be entertained from it. That's not the purpose of it. It's about learning to resolve things peacefully. So, and just to close up, sometimes we just because of how we're educated and brought to understand things here, we forget things, and we have a misconception of what myth is. Usually when we hear the word myth, it's considered a story about events that never happened. But when you do that, you dismiss the knowledge that's embedded in those stories. When I talk about myths in my classes, even in American government that I teach, I say don't think of myth as something that's make believe. Don't think of it as something that never happened. Think of it as a way of doing things. Where's the knowledge in this story? Where's the procedure in this story? Where's the instruction in this story? How can that make you move forward? That people need to see our traditional stories as banks of knowledge and not just cool stories to tell in the wintertime, right? There's also misunderstanding of origin stories, right? Or sometimes we call them origin myths, but they can be sacred and spirit, and they can be a sacred and spiritual way of explaining the creation of the world and people's place within it. And it contains profound lessons and a form of knowledge about cultural values. Sometimes we look at stereotypes. This term myth is also used to describe harmful stereotypes about indigenous people, such as assumptions about their appearance, where they live, or their relationship to modern society. The usage can obscure the fact that these are not facts but false beliefs. I remember working at a job, and this guy comes to me. He goes, I was driving through the Navajo Nation, and I was like, man, I just gotta ask you, why does everybody have nice cars but really ugly houses? Isn't that kind of opposite? Isn't where are your priorities of your people? Blah 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 blah. And I had to explain to them, if you haven't lived there, you don't understand the value of a good working vehicle. If your house is fine, it's fine. If you're sleeping and you're safe and it protects you from the elements, that's fine. But when town is 30 miles away and you don't have neighbors, it can be hard to get from one place to another. And I told him when my father died, my mom was by herself raising 4 kids. And my older brother got upset at her because she bought a car. And he was like, this is not what you're spending your money on, Mom. You got 4 kids and we're still trying to make our way up here. We can't help. So why are you buying a new vehicle? And my mom was like, because I'm a single woman raising 4 kids. I live in the middle of nowhere and I need something reliable to make sure I can get to town, make sure I can sell my jewelry, make sure I can buy groceries, make sure I can run to the hospital. We can't assume things um, uh, just because we don't understand them, and and so people look at natives with new cars, and it's not about having new things. It's not about the materialistic part of it. It's about function. Is this the vehicle that's going to get me where I need to go? And lastly, I look at colonial legacy. um, when people deem indigenous narratives as myth, that's a product of colonial history. And it's promoted the idea that Western empirical science is the only legitimate form of knowledge. But I know if you really look at your elders and your leadership in your tribes that have this traditional knowledge, my grandmother, even my mom and my aunts, they know which herbs treat different ailments. People would come to my grandmother all, to the time she died, as if they had if they had different physical problems, if there was women that came to them that were that their monthly bleeding never stopped, and my grandmother knew what things that they could take, what medicines they could take to heal that. When people were under stress, they talk about how that tobacco, the Navajo mountain smoke, is used to help people relieve stress, but it's not something you should get addicted to. But they're there. And there's stories behind all these plants, all these different animals, but they're not here for us to say, oh, look how cool, our beliefs are, or these are cool stories. They're actual knowledge in here. I mean, just because we don't break down the plant and pull out, identify its vitamin profile or its genetic profile, that doesn't mean the knowledge we have is any less. The Western medicine is built upon going to indigenous communities, finding out the medicines they use from nature and making synthetic versions of them. That's all, that's what we take now, and there's real knowledge out there. And so as teachers, as Title VI coordinators, and people that work with Native students, I just like you to take a look at the tribal knowledge that you learn. When you invite people from the Native community into your classrooms to speak to your kids, don't look just at the surface of the things that they're telling. Look for the knowledge that's shared with you. When we share dances and they give you background information on these dances, look for the knowledge that's there, not just for this. Don't just look at it as a cool story. When they sing these songs, they talk about these songs with you. Look at the knowledge that's within those songs, and and find out how you can relate this to your teachings in school. Don't just dismiss them because they're indigenous ways of doing things. Embrace them and incorporate them so that these kids can have a better understanding of what they're supposed to learn. And maybe having that indigenous example alongside their Western lessons can help them have a better understanding of what's being shared. And so that's my challenge to you. And Sarai, I look at Sarai and her looking at that Utah song that we have to hear every year at the different stadiums, sung by little kids. And look for the knowledge in the songs that you can sing. That song that Miss Timbambu shared, that has knowledge within it. Learn those lyrics, understand those lyrics, and why did they say those things. And it can accomplish the same purposes and be more meaningful to the kids that you teach. I don't know if there's any questions, but um, that's what I have. And I want to apologize for I got my work schedule changed, and so I won't be here tomorrow. So I'm sorry that if I put a kink in your all schedule, and I just want to express my gratitude to Title VI and Chuck for allowing me to keep doing it. But if you have any questions, please ask. Um, Otherwise, I'll get quiet over here.
Any comments? Anybody?
There's none. Let's move on. Just kidding.
No, this is Anne Marie Sherman. Thank you so much. Every time I come and you teach, I learn so much more. So I just appreciate how you open up the world to us um, by sharing your knowledge. And, when you talk about these things and it comes out, it comes up somewhere, then we're like, oh, you build on the knowledge that you had before. And so I just want to say thank you for all the presentations you've put forth. They matter, they're important, they're in the back of our minds, and they always help us grow. So thank you.
I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Dustin, Eddie, Calamity here. I agree about not paying attention to those stories, and now I'm looking back and I wish I would have been more attentive to those things. And the more I learn about myself and about where I came from, the more I want to know. And there's a guy that's on YouTube that does a lot of the teaching, Wally Brown, Navajo teaching. He has a lot of information, and he has gathered those information through a lot of benzil sada, what adi yakashbehos, what is channel. You got to be around to take the time and to give every effort to learn these things. You can't just be given to you. So I appreciate your presentation that you had.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else would like to say something? Well, Dustin, I think this is a really, really great opportunity to listen to your knowledge and your wisdom and basically some understanding with it, because the things that you indicated, I see there's a lot of like the stories that we may have, maybe it's in a metaphor, maybe it's parallel, there's a comparison somewhere. There's always a teaching moment here. I think as educators, I think that's what we strive to do and to strive to obtain, because we're around these students almost daily. And some that they challenge us in terms of because they want to know. Um, so I think that becomes an emblem for and a badge of honor for all our Title VI coordinators to become leaders. And what we're doing, what we're trying to do is the leadership that we have, we support those students who are striving and meet their goals. So, I see that, I see that, the presentation that you made, that's where it really took me in that direction. And I'm pretty sure that other people have different paths in terms of their learning. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else like to say anything? If not, Dustin, thank you for your flexibility, and thank the audience for their flexibility in terms of the little change in scheduling. So
Absolutely. I really appreciate it, guys. I really do.
yeah, yeah. Well, we appreciate you too, Dustin. So it's a kind of a two-way street now. So hey, thank you. Yeah.
Right on. Oh, bye.
Okay. Okay, let's move on. We have presenters, Bernadine and Andrea Bial. Are they here?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Okay, there, Bernadine. Yes. And is Andrea there with you too, or is she coming on?
No, sorry, Andrea's not gonna make it. We had a death in our family last week, so she's busy
Oh,
with arrangements, so it's just
yeah.
me today.
All right. Well, I'm sorry about your loss. So now, folks, I've had an opportunity to meet Bernadine and Andrea about maybe a couple months ago at the Native American Legislative Liaison Committee here on the Hill. And the presentation that she made, it really, really impressed me in terms of, I thought this would be an opportunity to showcase as a professional what you do with your profession, because you probably are going to talk about this, that you're the only group of people, native people across the United States, that have what you have in terms of your company. And I think this is a great opportunity to express, and you have a captive audience here. So you can introduce yourself, and we'll go from there. And I'll just give the time to you, and thank you for your presentation. Okay, you're mute, Bernadine.
Thank you, Dr. Foster. Let me share my screen here, make sure this works. Okay, can you see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. She Bernadine Biel Yunishe Todjini Nishle Ki Ani Bashichin Bitatni Edashache Honagatni Edashanele. My name is Bernadine Biel. I am one of the founders for Four Corners Canine Search and Rescue. And just going to talk a little bit about who we are, what we do, what we have done this year, what we're looking to do going forward. And one of the important pieces my sister and I talked to Dr. Foster about was about the education piece in this to youth and prevention, and how can we do more in the schools to with these kids. So I'll talk about that at the end here. So this first slide here is just information. We are based out of Farmington, New Mexico. That's our email address, our website, and then below is all the social media pages we're on: Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. That's myself on there with a detective with the Missing Persons Unit with the Navajo Nation. This is an area outside of Farmington where we're looking for a male that went missing last November. Our visions to locate, rescue, and recover lost and missing persons on Native American tribal lands and their surrounding communities. By serving victims and families with empathy, compassion, and respect, we provide immediate hope, relief, and support during the agonizing trauma of having a missing loved one. It's a little bit about my roots. Both my parents were Navajo police officers. My mom on the right was an officer for like 4 years. My dad on the left was an officer for over 20 years. He actually retired doing the work. They were mainly based out of Crown Point, New Mexico, which is maybe an hour south of Farmington, New Mexico. So that's where I grew up. I literally grew up right next to the police department, like within 100 feet of it. That was my life growing up all the way through high school. These are just a list of my certifications. I actually started with the state of New Mexico in 2016. I didn't start because I didn't make the decision for myself. My first canine is the one who actually made that decision for us. And then over the years, going into 2019, 2021, we met an elderly family from the Navajo Nation who had been looking for their son for about 6 months. But I learned a lot. There's a difference between in the state of New Mexico, most of their search and rescue teams they're called resources to the state. A resource to the state in New Mexico means that you can only go out on searches when you are deployed by the New Mexico State Police or the Department of Public Safety. So these search and rescue teams in New Mexico can't just go out when a family calls them or random people call them. Someone has to make communication with Mexico State Police or Department of Public Safety. I learned that firsthand again with this family that had a son missing out of Shiprock. I was wondering why they weren't getting any law enforcement help. And that's when I learned from my own team that my captain had told me that we couldn't go out and help him because the family needed to have Navajo PD contact the Department of Public Safety in order to request help, which was really hard for me to swallow that response, because I'm like, we're just right here. They're like 30 minutes from us. Why can't we go over and help? But there was a lot of barriers that way. So I ended up helping this elderly couple a couple weekends, and it was on the second weekend, a tip we had received in an area outside of Shiprock, New Mexico. My canine actually indicated an area, and we found a shallow grave, and unfortunately it was the son of this elderly couple. So that's what really changed his and my life. And we started learning more about other families out there that were in the same situation. And so in 2022, we decided to start this nonprofit. And we decided that we were not going to be a resource to the state or any states. That way we can deploy whenever we're asked. I don't have to wait on anybody to tell me to go or not go. It all depends on information gathered by families and information gathered by law enforcement. If they call us, if we have enough information, we will go out and do a search for them. I also sit on the New Mexico DOJ MMIP Task Force for the state of New Mexico. I also sit on the New Mexico Human Trafficking Task Force. My sister and I also sit on the Navajo Nation MMIP Task Force. My sister mainly sits in that room more than I do because I just can't sit in all these rooms for these meetings. So that's where my sister steps in on that part. We certify team members. You can become a certified team member or a volunteer. If you want to be certified team member, this is a list of things a team member would have to go through. We build our foundation off of FEMA and NASAR. NASAR is the National Association of Search and Rescue. So team members have to pass these 2 exams. After they pass them, they go into hands-on training, which is the list below. Like incident command. They have to learn a lot about maps, how to use a map and compass and navigation. They go through crime scene preservation, man tracking, lost person behavior. They have to be certified in first aid and CPR and stop the bleed. And then really big on what we do is the cultural sensitivity part, because of the areas, the land we're working on, being respectful to families in these areas. Volunteers don't go through all of this. Volunteers will, if they don't want to be certified, they just want to help. Usually we just have them be there for the families in these, if we set up an incident command, we have them just be there for the families. We have them prepare the meals. They can direct traffic. So we give them a little more basic, simple things to do at searches. Funding our mission. So our team is a 100% volunteer team. We don't have salaries. We don't have consistent source of funding. Everybody on our team has full-time jobs. I have a full-time job. So a lot of the work we do comes out of our own pocket. But we do community fundraisers and events. We go out and try to collect direct donations from supporters, create local partnerships and outreach in our communities. What we're aiming for with our needs is we're actually trying to get a vehicle for our team. we use my vehicle right now, which is my personal vehicle. And if my vehicle breaks down today, I am not gonna be able to help anybody till I get it fixed. We're also working to fundraise for Starlink because most of the areas we are in are so remote. And then trying to get equipment upgrades on our canine gear, drones, radios, and safety supplies. And our funds also go to training and certification costs for our team members. And this matters to us because we want to continue to serve families into 2026 and beyond. And it's also to ensure tribes and communities have reliable SAR support when they call for help. One of the goals of our team is to help other tribal nations form their own search and rescue teams so that they're their own resource and they don't have to depend on the federal government, the state, or local resources. We do it ourselves, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. This here is our team leaders. Up on top is Gunny. He's our black Czechoslovakian Shepherd. He's 4 years old. Gunny's certified in live find and error scent, and he does HRD. Live find means if I got a call today and someone said, Bernadine, a kid wandered off into the hills, never came back, we can't find him or her because it's so recent and there's still a good scent of the person in the area, that's what Gunny does in live find. HRD work is human remains detection. So Gunny is also certified in human remains detection. I got Gunny down in Texas from a guy who breeds dogs for Texas Police Department and Mexico Police. He saw the work we were doing 4 years ago and said, I want to donate a puppy to you, but you have to drive all the way down here to get him. So I drove all the way down to far Texas. And interesting thing about Gunny is Gunny was trained in Spanish. So I had to learn Spanish to communicate with Gunny because then I had to transition him to Navajo. So Gunny understands commands in Spanish and in Navajo and in English. So he's my trilingual dog. So I always tell my own kids and other kids we talk to that you can't say you can't speak your language or understand it because this guy understands 3 languages. Down below is Moby. Moby is our British Labrador. So you have British Labs and English Labs. English Labs have bigger heads and they're just bigger. British Labs are smaller. So that's what Moby. We got him 2 years ago in Troy, Alabama. And Moby is strictly our cadaver dog, HRD dog. Cadaver and HRD are the same thing. It's all with him looking for remains. Human remains could be above ground, could be buried, could be in the water. That's what he's trained on. And I picked up Moby down in Alabama, and I don't know if Alabama is a language, it's except for the accent. So brought Moby back up to Farmington and also had to teach him how to learn his commands in Navajo. So those are our team leaders there, Gunny and Moby. This is some stats for us. Ever since we became a nonprofit organization, on top, calls, that just means how many calls we got that year. Of those phone calls we received, the next line is searches. So if we look at 2022, we received 47 phone calls. Of those 47 phone calls, we turned 25 of them into searches. That just means we got enough good evidence, good facts, and we were able to take that information and deploy out to an area to search for a missing person. If you go down to assistance, what assistance means is how many times law enforcement was with us on those searches. So in 2022, we went on 25 searches and we only had an officer with us 1 time out of those searches. That year, we were in Arizona 10 times. We went into New Mexico 7 times. We were in Utah a couple times and then in Colorado. And the other at the bottom, we got a call from the Blackfeet Nation up in Montana. They had a missing 4-year-old girl. She went missing along the Two Medicine River, and they needed dogs, and they did not know where to find any. And same thing, the issue is, in order for them to get canines up there in their area, they need their Blackfeet Tribal Police Department to contact um, the Department of Public Safety to make the contact with a search and rescue team up there that they can deploy. And that just didn't happen because sometimes law enforcement might get a little territorial, might want to do the work themselves, or they just don't understand the process to get canines out there. So we raised so much, and we went out there. Took us 2 days to get up there. We searched with them for 2 days, and then we came back. But we did not have any fines for her in that area they had us searching. If you look at 2023, we had 34 searches, and you look at our assistants, we had an officer with us 17 times out of the 34 searches. And what that means is the collaboration with law enforcement. Year one, was a lot of data collecting, and it was just focusing on families and learning more about what's happening out there, what's working, what's not working. And we took that information into 2023, and 2023 was such a big relationship building year where we had to start talking to law enforcement, especially Navajo PD, and tell them, we're just here to help. We're here to fill these gaps where if you guys aren't available, we can help you with that. So I was really impressed with that year. And then in 2023, Navajo PD actually formed a missing persons unit, which what I thought was great. It's the best thing they've ever put together, but I'm a little frustrated this year as they kind of disbanded that unit that was doing so well. I mean, it was going in the right direction. They just need to fully staff it. They need a few more positions to it. But I'm really working and pushing for them to fully staff that unit back together, and so that that unit solely focuses on missing person cases. That's it. One of the problems was they get pulled off to other assignments. So we could have a search scheduled tomorrow, and then they tell me, Bernadine, hey, we're not going to make it. I can't do the search tomorrow because I've been assigned to the parade. And I'm like, all right, wow, this parade's more important than a missing person case, but that's okay. We'll go out there. So looking at 2025, this is updated as of last week. It's going to update more this week. I just got back from a search this morning. I was with San Juan County Sheriff all morning. So I just walked into my house like an hour ago. We got a search plan tomorrow in Red Mesa, Arizona, Utah border. We're going to be there tomorrow. And then I'm headed out on another search on Saturday for a family. So these numbers are growing still. We're at 34 searches as of yesterday, 11 females. And one thing I tell people is if you look at the males, the numbers have just keep growing. So we've been mainly looking for males lately here in the Four Corners area. Youngest male is actually 30 years old. With the females, it's been 4 years old to a 12-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 15-year-old actually this year. So that's the numbers there. Just to really tell you some big projects we had put on this year. In June, we put together an MMIP Legal Day. We partnered with DNA People's Legal Services. What we hear on the ground with the families is they just don't know what steps to take when they're fighting for justice, or when they have to get death certificates, or how does the probate process work, what happens in a death investigation, even some families falling into tax issues. So we put this event together with presentations to teach these families, basic legal terminology, what to understand in it. And they just got to engage with some legal assistants, some attorneys, got to talk to them for a whole day to get some of their answers taken care of that day. This picture is actually, we were doing a search along the San Juan River and we came across this area over near Aneth, Utah earlier this year. This has been a really important project here. Although, we began as a canine search and rescue team, our work has expanded as we've listened to families and we've responded to their needs we've seen on the ground. So one example is our expansion partnership with Truckers Against Trafficking. This young lady down below, her name's Tamika Platero. The searches for her took us along dirt roads that cut across tribal lands, but they also connect to towns, truck stops, and major highways. So this really opened our eyes to how vulnerable these routes are, not just for missing person cases, but also for trafficking. So that's what this led us to host an event with Truckers Against Trafficking. Their mission is to educate and mobilize members of the trucking, bus, and energy industries to combat human trafficking. So at this event, families and community members toured this Freedom Drivers project trailer. It's a mobile exhibit, and inside of it, it shares stories of trafficking survivors as well as truck stop workers and transit employees who noticed something and they spoke up about it and saved a life. So going forward, our vision is we're creating a campaign with Truckers Against Trafficking to reach every truck stop bordering tribal lands and towns here in the Four Corners area, hopefully including up in the Utah. These stops are critical points of contact because they're where traffickers may move victims, but they're also where everyday heroes can step in to help. So this is going to bring awareness directly to these locations. We're going to build prevention. We want to empower workers and travelers with the knowledge to recognize and report trafficking. Let me get to this one. All right. So this is the need for action. First and foremost, the need for action is to assist families searching for loved ones and to support tribes with no resources, just like we talked about in Blackfeet Nation in Montana. This year we've been helping them certify some people up there.
Hi.
So
Good. How are you? I'm in a meeting right now. Can I ask you to do me a gigantic favor? It's totally personal.
Hey, could you guys mute yourself, please? Thank you.
So up in Blackfeet Nation, we've helped them certify some community members. So I think we got about 7 people certified up there for their team. And now they've started working on horses. They're going to be utilizing horses in their search and rescue efforts because horses can smell decomposed odor out there. There's a special training that horses can go through. So I'm really proud for the work they've done. It wasn't easy. It was a lot of work, especially me being down here and they're up there. I'm really proud of the work they put in for that. And I know the next step for them is they want to start putting a canine on their team, but that's going to have to come later because we spent a lot of time getting the horses in here. So next nations that have been reaching out is Lummi Nation up in Washington. They are desperately needing some help. I mean, they're a small community, but they've reached out to us as well. So we're going to do what we can to see the best we can help them up in that area. Law enforcement. We spend a lot of time with law enforcement because of the gaps they have between them and families. So we continue to help bridge that communication gap. Also, a lot of law enforcement doesn't understand how canine search and rescue dogs work. So we provide a lot of education to them to understand how the dogs are utilized out in the field. Not only law enforcement, but families. People think I can just drive up and my dog's going to jump out of a truck and he's going to go find something. That's not how it works. There's a science behind to how these dogs work. And that's one thing we have to explain to law enforcement and our communities about it. When we talk about communities, it's awareness and education, understanding what the canines do, understanding how they are gathering their data and information in regard to their missing loved ones, what are the first steps they need to do, and helping them understand how to keep that form of communication between them and law enforcement, because they need each other in this whole process. And one thing big down here is a lot of the people that go missing has to do with alcohol dependency and vulnerability. So we're trying to find other orgs out there to address these needs in the community, because we've had situations where we've found a missing relative for these families, but no one really steps in for the aftercare for them. And we try to tell families, how are you going to take care of them so they don't do it again? Do you know about rehab facilities? Do you have that information? Do you know? And most of them don't. So we've been really focusing on that this year, on trying to find the right advocates and the right orgs out there to help these families with the aftercare of a relative that comes home. Also, we battle bootleggers down on the Navajo Nation. So that's been another key topic here, is how to stop that. How to come up with the consequences for that, because I've noticed that you go into these communities and people will tell you, oh, it's Matthew over there, he's a bootlegger, but no one ever reports it, which is weird. And so we've been working on that with law enforcement and these communities, that we need to get these types of people out of those areas, because they're a big part of why people are missing. And then we come down to empowerment, and that's to provide culturally grounded, community-driven solutions, and to collaborate regionally across Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico. And as I mentioned earlier with the Blackfeet Nation, we just want to help other tribes become their own resource by establishing certified SAR teams through their own communities and with their tribal members. Why this work matters. When families walk the ground where their loved one was found, there is heartbreak, but there's also a reclaiming of power. It's the reclaiming of answers and reclaiming of the land and the place. What happens on these lands is not natural, because it's not natural for our people to be taken. It's not natural for our relatives to be discarded in washes, ravines, or old mine shafts. But what is natural, what is ours, is to search for them, to bring them back, and to remind the land and the spirits that they are not forgotten. These are just things we did in the past few months. I just had a meeting with Washington State on their missing Indigenous persons alert, because down here in New Mexico, a couple of months ago, we just started a turquoise alert, and we have so many gaps in this alert. But what brought this on is because down below you see one of my next, the third one down, Four Corners MMIP Communication Network. The Southern Ute tribe is trying to form a communication network between New Mexico, Arizona, Utah, and Colorado. They're trying to figure out, do we need to build a database, or how do we do this so that we are really sharing information regionally between these 4 states? That conversation is what really drove me to talk with Washington State, because Arizona has a turquoise alert, Colorado has an alert. And when Southern Ute Tribe said, well, do we need an alert, or do we need a database, or do we need a platform, a dashboard? What do we want to do with this Four Corners MMIP communication network? But I really didn't want people to keep reinventing the wheel. I think we should have really learned from the first state that started the first alert, which was Washington State, which is why we had that meeting with them. I wanted to talk to them on what's working with them, what's not, what are their challenges, or is everything just working great? One of the amazing things, which was so simple to hear from them, is we have so much criteria that we have to meet down here in New Mexico before they'll do a turquoise alert. But in Washington State, the only criteria they have up there for a missing indigenous alert is that the person's missing and that they're indigenous. That's it. And then they sent out an alert up there. But down here in New Mexico and Arizona, there's this form officers have to fill out, and it's a lot. I just don't understand why we have to fill out 2 pages of information when up in Washington it's just one answer or 2 answers. The person's missing and they're indigenous. And then a couple of months ago, we went, that's how I met Dr. Foster. We presented at the NALLC up in Utah. Again, just to talk about the work we're doing across the 4 states. We are starting to get into medical death investigations, understanding the process and what agreements have been put in place with tribes. This came up because we had a few cases where family members were asking questions on why there's so many investigations coming up saying it was hypothermia, but families wanted to understand if there's any other tests that can be done and any other toxicology tests that could be performed. So this medical death investigation, we met a lady who's Hopi and Navajo. She's been really teaching us a whole lot on the processes, what each type of test is for, what you can ask for as a family member. And number one is understanding, like, for example, Navajo tribe, what is our agreement we have in place of where our relatives are going for these investigations? It's been very interesting to learn about that. So, and then we were in Nevada last week for our MMIR summit, learning again, building more relationships out there with their tribal liaison, with the Paiute tribe that handles missing person cases out there. At that event, we met 2 ladies with United Native Orgs who provide this telehealth mental wellness service. They provide so many free sessions to anybody that wants to reach out to them for mental wellness services, which I thought was really awesome because it's not a whole lot of info you have to provide, because the priority is to provide the service for our relatives. And then we were in ASU for 2 days. They had a cold case symposium down there, and they just hosted a Missing in Arizona event on Saturday. This is the important slide I really wanted to talk about. So much of prevention starts at home, not with programs or presentations, but with conversations. We can teach awareness in the schools, but if our youth don't feel safe talking at home, we're missing the foundation. We have seen time and time again that many of our missing cases began with someone who was struggling quietly. They didn't know how to talk about what they were feeling, or they felt no one would listen. So we have been discussing how there's the need to encourage families to make home a safe place where kids can share what's on their minds without being judged or dismissed, and just to take a few minutes of honest talk with their children. And I always remind parents that listening is protection. We don't always have to fix everything. Sometimes just being there and hearing your child can prevent things from escalating. So these are just some things, like, I think out loud all the time. I lay in my bed and all these ideas are running through my head. So we've been just trying to figure out ways to build prevention and awareness through education. Although, doing a one-time presentation at high school, it sparks interest, but how long does that last in these kids' head? So I know that more impact's going to come from continued learning. So I talked to Dr. Foster a little bit and trying to talk to other educators, and I'm hoping all of you can help me with this, or you might have other ideas and you don't have to have them now, just something to think about after today. But I've been trying to figure out, is it possible to put some sort of curriculum in the school for these kids, like half a semester we're teaching these topics and they're turning it into a project. And just things I was thinking about was, there's a science behind how our canines work. There's responsibility and empathy in canine care and training. There is cultural community awareness in MMIP. There's a lot around personal safety and self-awareness for these kids to, empower them to protect themselves and others. STEM and culture, teaching them about the scent, the tracking, the behavioral science, how it links to biology, physics, and traditional knowledge of these canines and the work we're doing. We're out on native land and we still have to pay our respects to the land being out there. And just trying to find educators to co-create lesson plans that honor culture, they promote safety, and to inspire our youth to lead. So I have an example of something that happened actually 2 weeks ago. A couple of weeks ago, our team helped locate a 15-year-old girl. She had been missing for 5 days, and law enforcement had already categorized her as a runaway. And yes, she had left home before, but that time she came back the same day. So this time something was different. When we started learning more, we found out she had been living with her dad for about a year. She actually had been left at his doorstep, and he was doing the best he could, but he didn't have the right support or the knowledge of how to help her through everything that she was carrying. So there was a lot of hurt and confusion on both sides, on her side and her dad's side. So it really made me stop and think, what are these kids really running from? Sometimes they're not running away from home, they're running from pain, from feeling unseen, from not knowing how to talk about what's going on. So that's why these conversations matter. If we can help families and schools create spaces where kids feel safe to speak, maybe they won't feel like they have to run to be heard. So this is my last slide. Earlier, I mentioned that I'm one of the founders of this organization. This is actually my co-founder, Trigger. He and I started this in 2016. I just, when I picked him up as a puppy, he was just going to be a family dog. And then the lady I got him from said, there's a lady in town that does obedience training. You should, if you're interested, you can take him there. And I did it because I've never done it with any of my dogs. So I took him to obedience training, and I didn't know how smart he was, how amazing he was. He caught on to everything really quickly. And the lady that was teaching obedience class was actually running a SAR team in the area. And she said, if we are interested, I should bring him out to do some SAR training just to see how he does, if he catches on to it. So we did. And oh my gosh, everything was just downhill from there. Like he caught on to every lesson we did with her, every training we did with her. And the day came when she said, Bernadine, I think this guy found his purpose in life, his passion. So she said, he wants to go to work and help find missing people. What do you want to do? And she said, if you're not going to do this, then can you give him to me? And I was like, no, I'm not giving this puppy up. So that's the day he changed my life back in 2016. And that's how I got into search and rescue. He and I had learned so much from so many different people. We have this expertise, this knowledge, and you can't gatekeep information and knowledge like that. So we put it to a purpose in helping our own people and helping other natives out there. But we lost Trigger last year in February. We lost him to cancer. He was 8 years old, NASAR certified in live find air scent human remains detection. He did 120 searches in his career, and he had assisted over 110 families. So that's Trigger. So we carry on Trigger's legacy and everything that we do. And that's all I got.
Are there any questions out there? Okay, Meredith, you have a question?
Yate Bernadine, I just wanted to say, the work you do is really important. And thank you for giving us all this information. This is great. Um, I actually helped with the Native American portion of a curriculum for Hope Squad. Utah has a suicide prevention program. And so Kathy Bledsoe, who was our old Title VI coordinator, she works with Greg Hudnall at the state of Utah for the Hope Squad. That's actually a network that we utilize in the Utah schools, and it's for suicide prevention. It's a set curriculum, and they have groups of students that are kind of the eyes and ears, for the other students. And so I know they have set up uh, Hope Squads in Alaska, and I know that they've had. I think that the Ute tribe was interested in getting a little bit more interested in like how they went about, and how they set that network up. But I would say I'd love to connect you with, with
Yeah.
Kathy and Greg. They're great people.
Mhm.
And I think that that's something that they could probably they know a lot of other, networks. I know that they've actually helped with other tribes as well. So um, it's a great network, and I think that that's what you do is really important, and it's changing lives and saving lives. But anyway, that I'll talk to you later. I think I'm on the email chain that Dr. Foster has, but yeah, I would love to connect you with Kathy. I'm sure it sounds like you definitely know about the social
Mhm.
justice portion of everything. So criminal
Yeah.
justice, like, yeah, I think that's really important. So I'll go ahead and make that connection. And Dr. Foster could also give you my email as well. But
Yeah.
thank you so much for presenting this important information. This is really, really great information.
Okay,
Thank you so much, Meredith.
you got another comment from Eddie?
Yare, Torichi, Nebashis I just wanted to point out some things. Dr. Foster and the Paiute tribe put together an online for Paiute government, and you said something about teaching the kids this, and maybe we can somehow do an online course or something. So I just thought I'd put in my 2 cents. Thank you. Yeah.
Very good. Any other comments? Okay. Yeah, Bernadine, this is some really good information. I think that it's given me another view in terms of what you do. I think it's lacking this kind of information to the tribes, and I think that, the tribes lack this kind of area where you have expertise. And it's really nice to hear that, the other tribes are reaching out to you, establishing that. Um, that's one part. The other part is that, it's really sad to hear that your funding, it's not where you like it to be. I know that funding is probably the biggest thing that's going to be a hardship for you. But I think that the more information that you put out there, you get interest. You just heard two from our group, and I'm pretty sure that they're in the group that they have some ideas. So I'll just kind of leave it at that. And the third is that thank you for your information, giving it to us, and I think it's we can probably carry this conversation on for the next 2 or 3 hours. It's the training of the dogs, the diet, the rest, the training of practicing, and the all for me, that part really I'm interested in something like that. And then the other piece is that uh, they're trilingual. They understand Navajo, they understand Spanish, and they understand English. So, your comment about if the dogs can do that, yeah, I know that the Navajos can do the same, speaking their and learning their own language. So anyway, that's just my 2 cents. Anybody
Yeah,
else would like to say something?
I just want to add real quick. I didn't get to add it in here, but there's a search and rescue team down in Florida. They're called Peace River Search and Rescue. They've got canines, they've got horses, and just this past year they got an otter. So they've been training this otter who's gonna go into the rivers and the waters to find any remains under the water. And how he indicates when he's coming across anything decomposed under the water is he sends bubbles back up. So he'll send bubbles up, so you'll see bubbles on top of the water. So now I'm telling everybody I need to get some funding because I'm gonna get an otter next.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. See, that part is really interesting. You know, you go back to our creation stories. During that time where the animals talk to each other, communicate that. And now that's gone away because of certain things that happen. Now we're going back to that. We're going back to the creation of those stories. It's kind of reminds me of what Dustin said earlier, that these things were established way back, and now we're beginning to go back to that. And this is something that I think as American Indian, we do have a lot of contributions in those areas too. So anyway,
Yeah, you're definitely right. And I think we forget that really everything we need to survive is right here on our land, whether it's we're growing it in the ground or it's our own animals. So I think we forget that ourselves. So, but I
yeah,
just want to thank you all so much for your time. Thank you, Dr. Foster, for inviting
okay,
me, and a lot to think about. So I know
yeah,
if you guys think about it and let me know if you have ideas. I'm just trying to get this out of my head and out there to figure out how we can come up with something. So I really appreciate it.
all right. Hey, thank you. Okay, let's move on. Updates. Some of you individuals, you attended the NIEA this past week, and anybody like to share their experiences there at NIEA? Okay, let's move on to the other. And we go to number B, 5B, is that the updates. The only update I have right now is that the Utah grants was confirmed today. So hopefully, that you'll see your funding either tomorrow or Monday of next week. And I think there are going to be 2 buckets of that, and they're going to come back to back. The other one is still going through the process, and I should know more either tomorrow or Monday on that second bucket. So that's what I got with the Utah grants. And I'll be emailing some of you, well, all of you in terms of my visitation, and we'll go through that process. And I'll send you a heads up of basically what I'm looking for. So those are my updates. Anybody have updates up there in your area? Title VI programs? Anybody would like to share? Okay, Anne Marie.
Oh,
So I'm going to try and share my screen. Is that
Okay.
going to work? Let's see.
Yes, you should be able to share your screen.
Okay. Gonna try and get on. I don't know if I can do it. What I did want to share is that in Alpine, we have a newsletter that goes out called All About Alpine. And so this edition, I submitted 3 stories and they all got put in, which was really fun. The first one was about Deja Fielding. She's a former Alpine student from American Fork High School. She won the Changemaker Award. And so I put that in the newsletter. And then the second one was a student named Dallin Yellowhair. He's a 7th grader and he's been working really hard on his grass and his singing. And in Chinle, he was I guess they had their own little ceremony and he was invited into the dance community down there. And so his mom just said thank you to the Title VI program for helping her son. And then the last one was just some of the activities we did in our summer camp. So we're trying hard to let the community, the Alpine community know about the Title VI program.
Okay.
We're just kind of quiet. So, sharing this school-wide, district-wide, hopefully people will start to see us. And then we'll also, if anyone's wanting to come, or if you're good at fry bread or want to just donate or come have fun, November 4th, we're having an activity at American Fork High School. It's a fundraiser. And we'll use those funds for the Native clubs at the different high schools so that they can purchase food. And then we also use that for food and to pay for our senior dinner. So anyway, November 4th, American Fork High School from 6:30 to 8:30. Thanks.
This is Lorne Pinnacus. For the Salt Lake City School District, we'll be having a movie showing November 7th at the Urban Indian Center. You'll see it in the Urban Indian Center newsletter that's given on their monthly newsletter app, and preferably middle school on up. But if they are like youngins, if you have youngins that want to go watch, just have them bring a parent. It's a great movie. For Four Souls of the Coyote, that's what it's called. My middle school last year liked it. Students, so any of your students are welcome to come and join. It's on November 7th. Starts at 6.
Okay. We also have Tashina.
Yes, thanks, Chuck. Good to see
USU.
you. University of Utah, pretty close. I'm stepping in for Samantha. She's our director here at the Center for Native Excellence and Tribal Engagement. I just wanted to invite everyone on the call. If you're available on Monday, November 3rd, we are hosting our annual Native American Heritage Month kickoff event. We work in partnership with the Salt Lake City Mayor's Office, a couple of different entities across our campus. This year, we're really excited to unveil one of our campus maps that indigenizes different spaces that are across campus. So we're really excited to do that. We also will be sharing out maybe before the end of the month just a list of different events that are happening throughout the valley and working with our Native Heritage Month committee. So thank you for anyone who has contributed any information. We look forward to seeing you and supporting some of your events throughout the month.
Anyone else like to share? Now, if you have information, if you're not sharing, if you have information that you'd like to have everybody to, I guess, you're showcasing your program, you might want to send it to me and I'll just send it on in a mass mailing. I think that would work. Like with Lorne and Toshina and Anne Marie, if you could do that. And the Urban Indian Center? No, okay. We have Brooklyn.
Yeah, I just wanted to share this weekend we're partnering with Utah State, the Brigham City Extension Center, and we're doing a pumpkin walk. So we'll be doing a display for our Title VI program, and we've had the kids just helping me with the display and just doing their pumpkins and doing like finger art and kind of our inspiration with rock art. So if anyone's interested coming to Brigham City, that will take place on Friday and Saturday from 3 to 9. So yeah.
Is that this Saturday, right?
Yeah, so it'll be this Friday and Saturday.
And do you have a place where Brigham City, is it at the high school or is that?
So it's actually it's just set up like where the old Indian schools were.
Okay.
I'll email you the flyer so you can
Okay.
see it if you want to send it out to everyone.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, anybody else like to share? The Urban Indian Center is oh, Lillian, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know if this is off the topic, but when I heard Brigham City and the Old Indian School, I went to the exhibit at Utah, excuse me, at Utah State, and I really, really enjoyed it. And at the end, I told these people that I really enjoyed it. It was a huge learning experience for me, and I took my husband, and everything was so new to him. And so I asked them what they're going to do with the exhibit when it's finished, and they said, "Oh, we'll just put it in storage." So I said, it would be so nice if there's some way you can figure out, maybe doing a mobile exhibit, take it down to Navajo Nation or other tribal nations that have sent kids there when the school was still active. We know that it started as a Navajo boarding school, and to see the distance, these children, and some of them were little, very tiny kids, and moved, across different states to Brigham City to go to boarding school. It's just amazing. And so that's why I said, maybe there's some way you can work with Navajo Nation to maybe take it down there. And, I really bet that if that happened, there would be a really good turnout. Just talking with some of the people that I know, they just said, that would be awesome. And I don't know if any of you went, and if there's some way we can suggest to them that they do consider that. And I haven't contacted anybody down in Window Rock to see what the plans are for the museum down there, and if they do, they would be interested in something like that, host this exhibit down there. But I just thought, maybe there are some people who are still around who did some of that artwork, because a lot of them didn't have signatures on them, and maybe some people will find their artwork, who knows? Or somebody might know someone who whose artwork looks familiar. So anyway, it just made such a huge impression on me, and just the history of boarding school and sending kids so far away from home. But at the end, it sounds like the younger, or the people who more recently attended it have, have made it such a learning experience, and have committed to keeping those memories alive. They have people get together to repaint the eye, and they have reunions, and a lot of you hear people talk about how boarding school was such a terrible thing, and it was, I think, in the earlier days, but in other times, I think people had gained so much from it. I mean, there was a lot that the school did. People were not only doing artwork, but learning a lot of different skills that they might not have received if they had stayed at home, because a lot, for the Navajo, there weren't, sometimes there were no options. There weren't schools. People could not get on a bus to get to school. There were no such things as buses, coming to pick. And they weren't living near the highways back in those days, and so this was the only way that they could learn something. And in the more recent times, I think it was a choice rather than something that was done to them. So anyway, just thought a lot about some of these things while I was going through the exhibit, and I don't know if y'all talked about it after you went to see the exhibit, but I just, it just really touched me. And, when people say, are you a survivor of a boarding school? Some people actually are thrivers because of this experience. So anyway, just thought I'd throw that out there.
Oh, well, yeah, I think that's a great idea, especially where they're gonna just store it. I think there's I'm thinking about the Urban Indian Center or the Sacred Circle. Certainly they could use something like that, but I just thought. Another comment from Emmy.
Yes. Hi. So I'm Amisha from Jordan School District, and I agree with everything Lillian just said. So we took our entire team to USU to see the exhibit as part of our PD, and we absolutely loved it. And when we were talking to Shannon, she actually has a mobile exhibit, and we have invited her to our community night, which usually it's on April 16th this year. And she's bringing in her mobile exhibit to our community night. And we are also working with some of the boarding school students to come and talk to our community at the community night. So we are in the process of finalizing that. And we were also planning on showing the short 5 minutes long video that they show at the exhibit to the entire community, as well as I said, we'll have speakers who would be discussing their experiences at the boarding school. And of course, we'll have our mobile exhibit as well. So that is going to be our theme for this year's community night. And I also want to add that on November 6th, Jordan School District is hosting a scholarship/career night for all our families. We have about 15 Native American professionals from different fields who are going to come and talk to the students about how to go about and how they went about their education and how they become experts in their field. And all these individuals have also agreed to mentor our students even in the future after the event. So if you have any students who is interested in attending this event, we welcome all Native American families. I have already sent out the flyer through Dr. Foster earlier. If you like, I'm happy to send it out again, or you can always reach us. It's on November 6th in Riverton. So we already have about 80 people RSVP for that so far. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, we are excited about that.
Hey, Emmy, I have it down on my calendar. Maybe you could send the flyer and I can send it out to everybody.
Sure, I can do that again. Yes.
Okay,
We have
thank you.
already done that once, but I'm happy to send it out again.
Okay,
Perfect. Thank you.
all right, thanks. Any other updates? Do we have, oh, we got one here, Miss Dominguez.
Hi, Dr. Foster. Can you hear me?
Okay, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
You're a little muffled.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, it's unclear what you're,
Yeah, I don't know. Can you hear me now or it's not? Still not able to?
a little muffled, but uh, I don't know
Sorry
what to
about
say
that.
about that. Yeah.
Sorry about that. Monica, she wasn't able to be for this meeting, so I am the community liaison for Native Americans here at the district, Ogden School District. Just only very quickly, we are going to have our parenting elevator in November 8th. We are going to celebrate our Native American heritage, and we are going to have student arts, live performers, and also family activity for all ages. And also, we are going to have, like I mentioned before, live performers and also a lot of community resources for our families. So this is gonna happen on November 8th. It started at 10 a.m. until 1 p.m. at Bill Noman High School.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure Monica, she's going to send you the flyer to share with everyone.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Hey, thanks. Yeah, I have that down on my calendar too. But if you send a flyer, I can send it out again.
Sure.
Hey, anybody else? Okay, is Penelope here? Is she here on the call? Urban Indian Center or Tashina from the Indian Training Center? Okay, if not, we'll get down to the last adjourning here. You know, again, I'd like to thank you guys for your flexibility in changing the date and time. Um, you know, it just shows me a lot about your character in terms of yeah, the words that you want to hear from our professional development trainer, provider, and presentation and presenter, mentor, elderler. You know, Dustin does a really good job with that. You know, I'm glad that we also have that flexibility for him to change the date and time also. Just kind of be aware of next month's meeting. You know, again, there's going to be a conflict in scheduling there. It's going to be Wednesday, November the 12th. So, and that's going to be at 9 o'clock. So there's going to be a little bit of change there too. So if you guys could mark that down on your calendar, in your scheduling. So, and last is thank you guys for attending, and we'll adjourn at this time. And if anybody would like to stay on for the next 2 or 3 minutes, I'll be available. Other than that, hey, have a great evening, and thank you for your attendance, and have a have a good rest of the day. Thank you.
Hey, hey.
Oh, yeah.